So in this CD525 video, I want to discuss with you leverage points. And I only want to introduce basically the reading that you have to do. And obviously we'll come back in the middle of the residency week to leverage points to discuss them as you are attempting to basically identify concretely what is the best leverage points for your comprehensive community initiative, which is your major assignment throughout the class. Now, the idea is to understand what is a leverage point. So, in a complex system, there are always ways where you can, in a way, activate some form of a change at the lowest possible cost. They're very, very difficult to identify, hence the necessity to know the organization extremely well. In the reading, the definition of a leverage point is this. These are places within complex systems, a corporation, an economy, a living body, a city, an ecosystem, where a small shift in one thing can produce big changes in everything. Obviously, they're really difficult to identify. On the other hand, being aware of the fact that this is what you want to try to identify once you start looking at a community from a comprehensive perspective really allows you to gain some very strategical information and ways of thinking critically about a theory of change. So, in the literature, and I give you some readings in class on this, obviously, there are long lists. I use the Meadows one for your final paper. We'll come and discuss it in class, obviously. But just to give you a broad sense, I will list to you some ideas about what and where can leverage points be found. One of the ways that we can leverage change, or one of the ways that we can identify a leverage point, can be a place where we want to make a change, a minimal change that will have a major impact on an overall system. A lot of people think that leverage points can be numbers. Being able to have the right information, numerical information, can be a great competitive advantage to measure change or a situation where nothing changes, for instance. And it can lead to what is also called a positive or a negative feedback loop. In other words, a leverage point can be a very simple information that is yet then followed up to make a change in the system that will have a positive impact or a negative impact on the organization. All of you can think about this from your own knowledge of work, but I'll give you a general, something that we never really reflect upon as a leverage point, but that a lot of people think about, generally speaking, is, for instance, whether the economy is growing or not. And we talk about economic growth. And generally we panic if the economic growth is a negative indicator. Some people think that what we call in economy stagnation, which is a zero growth, today is required. Other people criticize it. Most business people like to see a high one-digit growth, and people have become in a way accustomed to having a fairly small growth but a continuous growth. So that is, in a way, a leverage point that has become extremely influential, the annual economic growth indicator. And we never actually look at it critically. Now, there are other ways of acting on an organization. It can be an indicator of a production. For instance, you can look at the flow of goods coming into a business or the flow of goods exiting a business as an indicator of growth. It can also simply be, rather than movements of goods, it can simply be an indicator of movement. How much data do you process every year? Or, for instance, how much hit do you have on a Facebook page? But you see, leverage points are basically things that we're trying to act upon to then lead to a bigger change across the whole organization. And very often the most difficult and broadest ways of changing an organization can be, for instance, the rule system that organizes it. So it can be the rule system that would be incentives or penalties or constraints that exist in a given bylaw or a contract, whether we're discussing something that is in the public, the private, or the non-profit sectors. It can also be a distribution of power. So it's a bit more ambitious than a rule system. It can be that the structure of the organization itself and how power are distributed across the organization is something where change can be quite ambitious, but also can be motivated, can be brought together. However, one of the things that I want to point to you is that it is often easier to use a number or a piece of information to provoke some change than it is to change a rule of law, a regulatory system, a bylaw, or a contract clause, because they involve much more power relations. It is also even more difficult to change the power structure of a given organization or the power structure within the organization than it is to act on a small piece of information. Now, the most difficult is probably to change people's mindset, their own culture, their view of the world, their broad assumptions. And to activate change in that sphere, obviously, would be even more difficult. Now, in class, we will review up to 12 different possible leverage points as examples. And I want you to reflect on, what is easiest, what is most difficult, but also what is most practical. When you want to activate change, when you theorize change, when you want to strategically act so that you are basically implementing a theory of change, what is the best way to approach this? Should you be ambitious, or should you be actually modest? And that is really up to you to decide. But this is what a leverage point and thinking about leverage is all about. And I'll see you in class again. Thank you very much.